We will now call tonight's Indian Hill School District Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Davis, could you do the roll call, please?
Mrs. Eichholz?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
Mrs. Singh?
Here.
Mr. Summerall?
Present.
Mr. Tullis?
Here. Is there a motion to adopt the regular meeting agenda and addendum?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would like to move that we go into executive session in accordance with ORC 121.21G1 to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. Administrator salary proposal.
Second.
Approve.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mr. Summerall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Think about it. 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 Think about it.
Sure. Bentley, come here. Do you guys know Bentley Dalton?
Bentley Dalton.
Bentley Dalton. She's like one of the best of the very best. She does have a twin. Bentley, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
That would be great. Good evening. Thank you. Apologies for the delay. We are back in session and ready to rock and roll. We have a special guest tonight to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, Miss Bentley Dalton. Lead us away. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Again, apologies for running a little late in our executive session. We will now move on to our public commentary. Mr. Davis, anybody tonight?
We have none this evening.
And we will move on. Correspondence, recognition, and announcements. Mr. Konecki.
Welcome, board members and guests, to this evening. We have a lot of celebrations here at the beginning of the meeting tonight. First up, I'd like to recognize our partner organization, IHPTO. Is Erica Camp here? Erica, would you mind coming up? Heather, you can come too if you want to come up to the podium for a moment. Anybody else who's a PTO officer or member? Amy Condorotis, come on up, please, to the podium for a minute. We are not going to show the podium is right there in case you want to say some words. I'll give you my mic too in a minute. Put you on the spot. Our PTO has done an amazing job, not just this year, last year, every year. However, when we think back about what students were not able to have 2 years ago, our PTO pivoted and came up with amazing and creative activities to reach our students and our staff and to celebrate them all. And this year, as we return to the new normal of having activities again for staff and for students, they have just had an amazing year. I think I counted up something to the tune of over 70 plus activities. There you go, 82. Thank you. 82 activities this school year alone, PTO helped sponsor across the district with so many parent volunteers putting in so many hours. We can't do what we do here at Indian Hill without parent volunteers. And so we'd like to recognize our PTO partners. And I want to announce that they have made a wonderful membership video and reflective video that will be linked to our minutes and on our website, and we will push out in Be Brave Friday. It's about a 5-minute video that captures the essence of PTO as a member and partner, what they do for us all throughout the year, and it is amazing. I hope you all get a chance to see it. So if we could give them a big round of applause. And our outgoing president, Erica Camp, our incoming president, Heather Bennett, would anybody like to say anything?
I'm just going to say thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing us to show this video. We partner with the foundation, the boosters, the elite, and we can't do any of this without the volunteers and the students and the wonderful teaching staff and our support organizations. This year we have. There's over 82 events in Stowe County that we have either sponsored and or volunteered. So this video, Amy Condorotis, our amazing communication director, put it together, and it's a highlight reel of everything we've done this year. And it's amazing, and we're so proud of you kids. We're back. You guys have been doing awesome work this year, and I hope you have a wonderful summer and keep going next year. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. And Amy, thanks for putting together the video. I watched Amy helping edit the video with the executive board the other day. That's not an easy task. Next up, we'd like to honor our Indian Hill High School. We have 45 students inducted into the National Honor Society as of Sunday, May 1st. And in addition, we want to congratulate our teacher, Mark Atwood, who is also voted Honorary National Honor Society staff member for the 21-22 school year. If anybody is here from NHS or if Mr. Atwood is here, would you please stand to be recognized at this time? Congratulations. Okay, I have a script here, and Ms. Schonauer, if I don't get anything right, you can help fix it, okay? Next up, we're going to recognize DECA. DECA has had a history-making year for the program here at Indian Hill High School. 29 Indian Hill High School DECA students earned the right to advance to compete at the DECA International Competition in April, following their performance during the DECA State Competition held in Columbus during March. Of Indian Hill's 62 competitors, 50 advanced to the finals and 40 finished in the top 10 of their event with 9 first-place finishes. During the DECA International Competition that took place in Atlanta during April, 5 Indian Hill High School students earned recognition. One student, William Dalton, made it onto the international competition stage by earning 4th place overall out of 125 students who competed in food marketing. Congratulations.
Yay.
4 other students earned medals, including Sanibel Betts for travel and tourism, Vinya Ivaturi for hospitality selling, Ryan Ramaker for quick serve management, and Peter Shakely for business finance. Congratulations. Additionally, we want to celebrate again William Dalton, who made school history by becoming the first DECA state officer to represent Indian Hill. We're very pleased at Indian Hill to offer Career Pathways programming and this marketing program in partnership with Great Oaks. It's just one example of how our students can find their own path, and we can help learners as individuals along the way. And I'd like to invite our marketing instructor and DECA advisor, Susan Schonauer, up here to say a few words. Susan?
Is this good? Hello?
Hot
Okay.
mic.
Great. Okay, we had a great year, as you said. Actually, William got 4th place out of over 250 students. So it's a very big deal to do what he did. It's an endurance challenge, the DECA International event. These guys will tell you, you don't stop moving for 4 days. But it was fantastic, and I'm just going to have each one of them come up and just say what their event was, because there's so many unique events that they were all in different events, and it's like a track meet. Everybody has their specialty, and then we all just cheer each other on, so it's amazing. Unfortunately, Phil, my counterpart, is officiating a track meet right now, so he is not here with us. Because he does all kinds of other things in his free time. So anyway, we'll go really quick, but I just want each student to just say their name and what their event was. Come on up.
All right, hi, I'm Sanibel Betts, and I do travel and tourism team decision making.
Hi, I'm Kunal Ranjan, and I did the startup business plan with my partner, Wyatt Higgins.
Hi, I'm William Dalton. Sorry. And I competed in food marketing.
I'm Emerson Evans, and I do hotel and lodging management.
I'm Bentley Dalton, and I do automotive services.
I'm Yvette Detweiler, and I do principles of marketing.
Hi, I'm Pranav Rastogi, and I do business finance.
Hi, I'm Hollis Chan, and I did principles of marketing.
I'm Arjun Velayutham. I did Principles of Business Management.
Hi, I'm Nina Foad, and I did sports and entertainment team decision making.
Nina, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So I've watched like the last couple of years. When Indian Hill DECA walks in, does like the rest of the Ohio Earth just go like, holy cow, Indian Hill's here? Is that pretty much what happens? Because every year I see, yeah. Congratulations to all you guys. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations, students. Next up, board members, we want to congratulate our 9 IHS students who won their events at the Ohio Technical Student Association state competition held Friday, April 22nd at the Hamilton campus of Miami University. The winning students included Sarah Grace Brown, Sophia Liu, Kunal Ranjan, Connor Vandenboom, Nick Guinan, Jack Gerber, Sanyuka Abasing, Krish Ranjan, and Arjun Verma. Are any of our Technical Student Association winners here this evening? Let's give them a round of applause. We're just getting started. Next up, we want to celebrate our IHES student team of Carter Compton, Dylan Mikola, and George Harold, who won the Stock Market Game Portfolio Challenge for grades 4 through 12, recently sponsored by the nonprofit Alpaugh Family Economics Center of the University of Cincinnati. Are any of our Braves here from the elementary school? Okay. This is an ongoing annual tradition where our 4th and 5th graders beat out college students and high school students all across Ohio. It's quite an amazing thing, and all of our students in the grade level are participating now, which is amazing.
Any stock tips? Because we don't need them right now.
We're going to move on. Another amazing celebration tonight. If Raylan Coward is here, can you come up, Raylan? Why don't you go to the podium and you can say a few words here in just a moment. Indian Hill High School wants to congratulate senior Raylan Coward for earning 2 USA Gymnastics Excel Diamond State Championship titles. Raylan finished in first place in Ohio for both vault and bar competitions during the state meet in April. Raylan also became a Region 5 USA Gymnastics Excel Diamond first place regional floor champion, finishing second all around. Raylan is a member of Team Ohio, which also won and beat out Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and that place we call Michigan. Congratulations, Raylan, you're a state champ. We're so proud of you. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here tonight and celebrate my achievements.
Thank you, Raylan. We're proud of you. We have a certificate here for you. Great job. Just so everybody knows, when we don't have enough athletes to field an entire team, we're able to help sponsor that student athlete through our OHSA rules and work with their partner organizations. It's wonderful to be able to help each individual. We talk about learners as doers, and Raylan's able to continue to do what she wants and represent Indian Hill in such an amazing way. Anytime we have a state championship, that's a really special and unique thing in Ohio, especially in gymnastics. It is so tough to win in any category, let alone 2, and second place overall. It's just amazing. Congratulations. Okay. Next up, board members, we have 3 IH students, Maria and Elizabeth and Catherine Fullen. They finished in 7th place, and Maria and Elizabeth's duet placed 10th out of 43 duets recently at the National Synchronized Swim Meet. Do we have any of our brave swimmers here? Again, another unique sporting celebration for our district. Congratulations to all of those students. Next up, we'd like to share that we're so proud of our ever-evolving STEM program. And tonight we want to talk about the Design Award, especially the work of our youngest Braves who are here from the primary school tonight. We want to recognize Indian Hill Elementary School 3rd grade students Will Esselin, Andrew Schubert, and Nate Strickland for earning the 2022 Inspired Innovator Award as part of the Architectural Foundation of Cincinnati's Design Lab Citywide Architecture Competition. Come on up here, gang. The Design Lab is a project-based K-12 education program tailored to broaden and deepen students' awareness, appreciation, and active participation in natural and built environments. And we would like our gifted intervention specialist, Monica Dawkins here, our chief STEM officer, so to speak, to say a few words.
I have to tell you, while their final project is very impressive and award-winning, their process over the last 8 weeks is just as noteworthy. They really amplified our 21st century learning skills of creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and what's the 4th one, boys? Creativity, collaboration, critical thinking. Did we say creativity? Well, they exemplified all of them very, very well, along with a lot of design thinking. So please give them a very nice round of applause.
Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Next up, board members, also exciting, Mr. Jim Nichols is here to give us a facility and operations presentation and update.
I do not appreciate Mr. Konecki making follow that. That is tough acts to follow right there, and very exciting to see all of the successes of our students. But I do have exciting news, and I want to give you just some quick construction updates. I encourage anybody that gets a chance to drive by our middle school campus right now to see what's happening over there. We've poured some concrete, which is exciting. It's a huge step in the building coming up. We understand some walls might be going in soon. So you're going to start to see the building take shape. And then as you're driving in there, I know a lot of our families drop off in the morning. You're starting to see some new roads go in, and our car rider lines will look different next year. We're going to be sending you some beautiful maps to help you understand where to go. But just some specifics, again, there will be a complete redesign at our high school, middle school campus of what the parking lot looks like. The biggest thing I think you'll notice next year is a much larger bus lot that will create enhanced safety for our students. At the end, there'll be an island where kids can walk down and safely get on the bus. If you've ever seen our dismissal right now, our bus drivers do an amazing job of parking, but it's kind of like a puzzle that just fits the right way. Moving forward, we'll be able to get a lot of buses in there and quickly get those students on there and get them home. So we're excited about that. You will also, now since we're in the primary school, let's talk briefly about what's going to happen here this summer. This space here will eventually get some new fire suppression. We'll see when the project's done, some new ceilings in here. But the main core work that will happen this summer are some offices back behind us here. We're going to be renovating some older spaces. Some of them have been locker rooms at one time. And so I know some of us here may have even experienced them being a locker room while you came to school. But we're going to be renovating those spaces and offices here at the primary school. We'll talk more about this down the road, but eventually this front entrance won't be utilized for a period of time next year. We'll have a temporary entrance where the students generally enter for recess. And so we're making some work this summer to get that ready. I don't think families or students will notice much of a difference until we're done. And you have a beautiful, safe new entrance here at the primary school. So that's coming up. If you're at the elementary school, you're going to notice the parking in the front. We're going to be redesigning that as well. One of the things we want to do is separate cars from buses. Currently, those two vehicles mix over there. We have some great procedures in place to keep students safe. But after this year, we'll have an area where cars can come and loop around in front of the building. We're going to expand some bus parking over there, so we'll get a couple more buses in, and those two spaces will stay separate. Our good friends at the Indian Hill Church are going to let us borrow some of their parking lot next year so that we can make sure we keep cars off Drake Road. We're not backing up traffic in the morning too terribly. Everybody's trying to get somewhere, so we're very appreciative that Indian Hill Church is going to work with us on that. Again, we'll be sending you home a beautiful map in August, so you'll see exactly where you need to go. Also, we'll temporarily be using the side bus lot for our playground next year at the elementary school. We'll continue to use Shawnee Field. What a great resource we have there for our students to play, because in the back, we'll be renovating that space for a playground. They'll be doing some storage materials there while we're building the new performing arts facility at the elementary school. So we have a really busy summer ahead, but we've got great partners that you'll hear from later tonight, and we are well on our way to a very productive summer. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Next up this evening, we're going to talk about the IH Promise Plan, our strategic plan, and we have an update from Dr. Melissa Stewart and Dr. Kim Gibbon.
Well, like Mr. Nichols, I too have some exciting information to share. So I just want to say thanks for letting us give you an update. We were a little bit quiet last month because we were really busy behind the scenes working, and now we're ready to unveil how we are starting to launch this strategic plan. So if Dr. Given would join me up at the podium, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about our initial steps, which includes Dr. Given. One of the main steps that we took was that Dr. Given is now officially our Strategic Plan and Innovation Coordinator. And we recognized as a school district, if this plan truly was going to make a difference for each and every one of our students, we needed somebody who that would be their sole focus, was helping us to stay very organized and very intent and purposeful about all the decisions that we were making regarding the strategic plan. And I will say, you're going to see in a few more slides what incredible work that she's been able to do in a very short period of time. We also, last week, had a day-long leadership meeting, and the entire meeting was dedicated to our strategic plan. Every building leader, as well as support personnel such as the athletic director, all leadership really got to focus on what does our strategic plan mean and how do each one of us help to carry that plan into the future. So having a day to really think purposefully about all the steps that we want to take next year and how each leader is going to make a difference already set us up for success. We're continuing our partnership with Education Elements, which is the group that helped us to facilitate the strategic plan process. They are offering us some free webinars so that we can stay involved with them and we can hear some of their helpful hints. So we are participating in all of those. Last, you're going to see that we are already taking some action steps. So at the high school, for example, we have adopted 8 new classes for next year. There is some description of those 8 classes within your red folder, and each one of them is innovative and supports one of the initiatives associated with the strategic plan. Oops, wrong way. There we go. Probably one of the most important steps that we've taken was thinking about the collaborative teams that would support planning for each of the 10 initiatives. So to get that started, we started with our own staff members. All educators within the district got information about what those 10 initiatives are, and they had a chance to review them and decide if they wanted to be part of that steering committee for each one of those 10 initiatives. Here's the good news. We had so many people raise their hand in this district, we had to turn some people away, which is just a testimony of the incredible people who work and are dedicated to the students of this district. So turning people away didn't mean they were done with the work. Dr. Given's going to talk to us a little bit about what that meant to have lots of ways that people can be involved with a strategic plan.
So we're very excited that we're tying all of our thought and resources and process into strategic plan. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is the amount of learning that we provide for teachers. And one way that we're going to make sure that all of us are understanding how the strategic plan is going to impact the student experience is by providing professional learning. So we were able to offer teachers and staff members many opportunities for them to decide how they wanted to learn. One of those was serving on a committee where they get to look at strategic plan initiatives, but there were 70 other offerings that people could choose from in order to be able to consider their instruction and maybe make some shifts that kind of align with the things that we've been talking about as a community and as a district. Another thing I'm really excited about is how many people took part in this work to help us plan it, and I think that people are going to really enjoy being able to take part in these things. Dr. Stewart mentioned that we had some people who volunteered to do this work. I told them, don't go anywhere. We're going to be working on this for 5 years. There's going to be lots of ways that we're going to be able to get input from all of our faculty and staff, and also from our students and from our community.
In the short amount of time that Dr. Given has had this opportunity to lead us in the strategic plan, coordinate it, she's already spent over 16 hours meeting with small groups or individuals of teachers to make sure that they felt clear about what the strategic plan is what that means for them as teachers and how they can be involved in it, including their own professional learning. So she's quite dedicated to making sure that it is a personalized experience for every single teacher. And you will hear this term, PPL, quite often, which stands for Personalized Professional Learning. And we recognize, just like our students, our teachers come to opportunity to learn with all different backgrounds and experiences and interests. So no matter what their entry level is, we have a way for them to engage in personalized professional learning that's meaningful for them specifically in a unique way.
I would just add to that, very few public school organizations in Ohio or across the nation have truly implemented a PPL model the way that Dr. Given, Dr. Stewart, and the team are working on this as a part of our strategic plan. And we think it's so serious, and we have so many teachers involved for a reason. Making sure that employees have voice and choice is one of the best ways to retain world-class educators in public schools. And it takes a large lift and a large team to be able to offer this many menu choices to almost 300 staff members on an annualized basis and plug and play in a calendar where we're doing relevant things and we're able to evolve annually to meet the initiatives in the strategic plan. And that was one of the most important comments that came out of the teacher feedback while we were creating the plan. Things that they wanted to see in their own work styles, and it's going to impact children in a positive way. So thank you for all the work that you've both been doing on the plan.
Dr. Given, I want to also interject. Thank you for your time, what you're doing. We're excited to what is happening. You're making a difference, and we look forward to reports from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing that we wanted to share again tonight that came out of a lot of the dialogue with the Board of Education as we were launching the IH Promise Plan, and that was that the board had piloted 3 new committees in January: our District STEM Advisory Committee, our Safety, Health, and Wellness Committee, and our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We've had over 31 parents, community members, and professional experts in different fields join us for 2 meetings for each of those committees this spring. Really proud of that. We've had board volunteer participation as well. And we are going to be extending those committees into the 22-23 school year and inviting any interested stakeholders, that's parents, partners, professional experts in our community, to come and talk to us about a future slate of topics and quarterly meetings. Those are designed to be all-inclusive, welcoming, and to be able to talk about timely topics that matter to parents, whether it's issues, concerns, interests, or the strategic plan initiatives. And we encourage anybody to reach out if you're interested. Please let me know, and those are open for all to participate in as we move forward. We'll have an entire slate of those dates on the calendar. Thank you, Dr. Stewart. That concludes the recognition portion of the agenda. And, almost all of the recognition portion. Next up, we have announcements, of course, our 5-year forecast presentation from our treasurer, Mr. McDavis.
Thank you, Mr. Konecki, and thank you to the board for giving me the opportunity to do this presentation. Just as a note of history, back when I started in 2016, the district obviously was required to file a 5-year forecast back then in October and then also in May. But at the time, it wasn't the tradition to do a presentation. So the board allowed me to sort of start that tradition of doing the presentation twice a year. And I feel it's great for not just the board, but also for our community to hear some key words that we talk about all the time while we're conducting business, but may not get the time during these meetings to talk about it. So I have the opportunity to get about 5-10 minutes twice a year and talk about all the important things that we do with our finances here in the district. And with that, we'll get right into it. As we look at our 5-year forecast, you think of it as your checking account at home. We do cash accounting here in the district. That's later converted to accrual accounting at the end of the year, and that's audited by the state of Ohio. But as you think of your checking account at home, you look at your revenue, your expenses, and then the difference goes into maybe a savings account, maybe investments, wherever they're applicable. That's what we do here in the district. We look at our revenue, we look at our expenses, and then at the end of the year, we hope there's a surplus,
and that goes into our carryover and serves as the savings account for the district. As we look at this first slide, this is our projected revenue. Some things I like to point out about this. We are what's called a property tax district. A significant amount of our revenues come from the property taxes, not just the regular property taxes that we see on our tax bills, but there's also a section that the state of Ohio pays that's called the allocation. That consists of the rollback and the homestead money that was part of the deal back in the 1970s, where they helped offset property tax payments with a payment out of the revenues collected at the state level. As of 2013, that's no longer allowed on new levies, so any new levy that's passed by a district is 100% funded by the property taxes of that district. So that's just something to think about as you think about the world of levies. Moving forward, we'll no longer have the opportunity to offset some of those with state revenues for our taxpayers, but that will stay with the old ones as long as we have them. And all of our old levies are continuous, so that will stay part of our revenue moving forward. There's also a public utility, personal property tax. What that is, if you just think about the poles, the pipes, all the things that public utilities use to move electricity, gas, those are all taxed, and part of that goes to the school district. Also, we have no income tax in the state. We have what's called other resources, and most of that consists of, again, property taxes. We have some districts over in Kenwood area, some commercial properties that are under what's called a TIF agreement, and as part of that TIF agreement, Sycamore Township pays us their taxes in full. So that goes into that other resources line, and as you can see, now we've filled up almost all of our bucket with property taxes. We do get about 4% of our income per year from the state education fund. They've just recently redid the way they calculate those payments, and Indian Hill received about the same as we had before, so nothing exciting to report there, but at the same time, nothing was removed as well, so good news there. Just a quick check on where our funds do come. Like I said, state funds provide about 4% through that educational fund. We do get to supplement some of our general fund education money through grants from the federal government. That makes up about 2% of our total revenue. Some of the things we use those funds for are our IDEA, special education funds, which fund some educational aids that work here in the district. It also funds some other resources that we use, such as an interpreter. We also have a Title I fund, which we use to pay some reading teacher, and then some tutors as well come out of that fund. Generally, though, the federal funds and the state funds make up a very small portion of our overall budget. This is a look at our property value breakdown over the course of about 2 decades. As you can see there in the middle, it was up very high and then had a steep drop. That was, of course, the recession that happened in the early 2010s. You can see we built back up over time, and the 2 tiles there at the end represent tax year 2020, which broke the record for the highest property valuation in Indian Hill School District, and then 2021, which surpassed 2020. So property values are growing in the district. They are, over the last few years, growing very slowly. That trend is because Indian Hill Village makes up a large portion of our property valuation, and that property valuation has been moving very slowly over the last few years. However, we do see a trend that's coming where values in the district could be going up as we see more homes that are being sold. For some time now in the Kenwood area and the Sturbridge area, we've seen houses that go on the market and come up with a sold sign when they put the sign out. That's beginning to happen in the village too. Houses are not staying on the market very long, and as we get to the next reassessment year that will occur in tax year 2023, we'll begin to see property taxes go up, and I'm hoping that we'll see a pretty good increase as well.
Mick, if you could, because I think it's helpful, just explain the correlation of the values with the outside voted millage. Just, there's a perception that as the values go up, the school district's automatically going to bring in more revenue.
That's a good segue, Mr. Tullis. As we look at this slide, I have what's called House Bill 920. House Bill 920 was a bill that was passed back in the 70s. This bill basically says that revenue will increase uniformly with property market values. This includes the outside millage, which means as property values rise, millage goes down, and the district collects pretty close to the same amount that we collected the year before. It also works in reverse. If the property values would go down, millage would go up, and the district would collect about the same as they collected before. The one exception to this is what's called inside millage. Those are non-voted mills on property taxes. We do see some growth with that millage each year. So as those property values go up throughout the district, we will begin to see a small climb in revenue. But basically, we see very flat revenue through property taxes over time. Unless, of course, a levy's passed where revenue then flows for whatever the voted amount is starting at the time of the levy. So as you can see, I made a note there. Our 2021 levy began collecting revenue in fiscal year 2022, which we're currently in. The first year it will collect the full revenues, fiscal year 2023. So you can see the corresponding tiles moving up there and then flattening off as we get to that period of House Bill 920 and those market values start to react with millage. So expenditures, you can see that the two big numbers there are salaries and benefits. We are about, on average, anywhere from about 70 to 75% of our annual expenditures go to the salaries of our teachers, of our aides, of our bus drivers, our administrators, our educational aides. Hopefully I haven't missed anybody because everybody's important to the experience of our students. We are a human resource business. We do have some other expenses, personal services, which are some big numbers include such items as outside education that we need to provide for students that we were unable to provide here in the district. That comes out of that category. We have supplies and materials, which is everything you can think of, from the supplies and materials in classrooms to the gas that powers our buses. Some of the smaller ones we could see, we have capital outlay, and I will advance just real quick here. This is a look at our salaries over time. You can see that we had some trend there where they went down over in 2019 to 2020 and then again to 2021. They've started to increase again through year 2022 and then fiscal year 2023, which is the first year of the new collective bargaining agreement. We made some commitments to the staff to begin to increase our salary again as we looked at some of the districts and saw that we were beginning to not be as competitive as we wanted to be or where Indian Hill expects to be as far as what we pay our staff. So those have begun to climb again. As you look at benefits, the main driver of this is healthcare. Healthcare, we have done a phenomenal job here in the district. We looked at a 3.9% rate increase for calendar year 2022. The calendar year 2023 renewal is looking fantastic at this point. Throughout the rest of my forecast, I've estimated 8 to 9% increase. However, I've got some intel just recently as we talk about how healthcare works. If you think about the Anthems and the United Healthcares of the world, what they do is they get 3-4-year contracts with all of the different providers here, not just in Cincinnati, but in every other region. And what we've seen in healthcare, their salaries and benefits, I can speak from an example of my own home. My wife works with a person at UC Health as a nurse who took a job in the state of Texas with a $30,000 sign-on bonus and a $20,000 moving bonus. So when those contracts come up in 3 years, Anthem and United Healthcare are going to look to renegotiate, and they're going to look to that. We're going to see inflation in healthcare start at that point. So again, that brings, some trepidation for me, and those are things that we have to look out for.
That's a great point, Nick. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a real concern for us as we look forward in being fiscally responsible. And that to me is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, points that we've got to be aware of looking forward. So thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome. So another thing we talk about in expenses is our capital outlay. We had for a period of time been repairing roofs and putting investments into capital throughout the district from our general fund. We went ahead and we were fortunate enough to get the $77 million bond levy passed, and that took care of a lot of significant needs on the district capital side. We do have some other needs that we found as we were going through that process. The board did vote in February to proceed with some of those items. You can see those reflected in years 23 and 24. I budgeted $900,000 moving forward for 25 and 26. Those cover such items as our buses. We've made a commitment to get 2 buses a year to make sure our bus fleet continues to be modern and efficient. We've put $140,000 as a set aside for all of the synthetic turf fields we have in the district. When I arrived in the district, we did not have a set aside, so it was I know Mrs. Eichholz can remember some of those finance committee meetings we had where we were staring down, how long did we have until those fields need to be replaced, and we had no money set aside for it. So we've been able to get that up to speed and get that to the point where our fields are going to be replaced and maintained for the safety of our students. We also have within that budget a significant amount dedicated towards technology each year.
What about, Nick, what would you set aside for things that happen as far as rainy day fund and maintenance issues that are unexpected and unplanned for? Do you have a formula that you would use to set aside something to put in some of these amounts in the years looking forward? Is there a certain process that you do?
So I really don't have a process in place to put that into, for those items that you don't expect. We do have what you could call a rainy day fund. I know if our person in communications heard me say that, she would be cringing right now. But that's our carryover fund.
We won't call it that. So you do have something accounted for something that's unexpected. That's my question.
Absolutely, we do. We have a carryover fund. That got down to about $14 million before the levy. We were looking at our deficit over the next few years, seeing where that would take the carryover, and obviously that gave us the signs that we needed to gain more revenue. That was the motivation to do the levy at the time. One thing interesting about school districts is because of levy, the way they operate, we get all of the money the first year, and then it, over a period of time, doesn't grow much. So we have a pot of money in year one, but our expenses grow with an inflation rate that's much higher than our revenue, and that line catches up much faster to where that revenue is, and that helps, or I won't say helps, but that's what attains that deficit spending. And that's the cycle that school districts get into. We've been fortunate at Indian Hill. We have a very healthy carryover. That carryover will increase based on my 5-year forecast as I've presented it here. Part of the balance of being a prudent school district and being fiscally responsible is the balance between what do you carry over and what do you spend? What should be spent on those students? Obviously, a huge carryover we don't get much advantage from because I'm limited on the investments I can make. They're very, Ohio Revised Code makes it so they're very vanilla. I make sure the capitals the principal's maintained, and then the interest is very small from those types of investments.
Mr. Davis, can I just point out on the slide prior that in 2020, that big jump in expenditures, capital outlay, was because of Home of the Braves? Correct?
That is correct. A significant portion of that 2020 investment was for Home of the Braves that was also offset in the revenue line at the time and continues to be paid down through pledges accrued from the foundation for that project at the time.
Correct. Thank you. That's what I wanted to point out.
So with that, as we look at the final tile here, we see that, what this looks at our revenue versus our expenditure. Revenue's in black, the expenditures are in gray. You can see the carryover line, the yellow line, increases slightly year over year. If we continued at the estimate I have for the 5-year forecast, we would have about 21 million in the bank at that point. But we do have to realize that there's some key target dates that are coming up. We do have to negotiate the collective bargaining agreement. It will expire in June 30th of 2025. So at that point, we will go back with our Indian Hill Educators Association, and we will then go through the, professional organization. I don't want to give the wrong term there. We will go back with them, and we will collectively bargain that agreement again. And, as always, we will reach an agreement that's fair for both sides. But that will, I don't have any numbers really built into that 2026 forecast to show any base increases at that time. So, at that point, we could potentially be looking at deficit spending again, and we have to address that. As a Board of Education, as a community, we'll probably be talking to a revamped finance committee at that point and start to think about what our strategies are, moving forward after, that levy renewal and then all the things that come with that in the future. So, as we look at school finance, especially here at Indian Hill, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces that the board has always, I've always been very welcomed by the board to talk about. We spend a lot of time discussing these things. I just don't always get to share them with the community a lot, so this is a welcomed opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Nick. That's all very helpful information.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next up is the Superintendent's Report, board members. Item 8, letter A is a resolution declaring impracticability of transportation, offering payment to parents in lieu of transportation. Item B is approval of the following courses that Dr. Stewart had highlighted in the strategic plan. Letter C is the approval of an overnight field trip for our boys and girls cross-country teams. And letter D, 1 through 19, are a host of personnel actions, tuition reimbursements, professional meeting approvals, and approvals of certified contracts, classified contracts, salary adjustments, continuing employment contracts, and approvals of supplementals, service contracts for classified staff and certified staff as listed, including administrative salaries and benefits and adjustments for some of our classified staff members not covered in the collective bargaining agreement. I would ask, unless there are specific questions, that the board would entertain an approval motion for items 8A through D19 at this time.
Just as a note, there was also some items on your addendum page there.
Yeah, the amount announcement that I made includes the numbers and items on the addendum as well.
Okay, so I move that we vote to approve Superintendent Report. So I'm going back up to the numbers. Letter D, 1 through, sorry, letter A, 1 through, sorry, 1 through 15, plus the addendum. Sorry, that was long.
Second.
You said, what was the motion? It was what? It was A through D?
D15 plus D through 19 on the addendum.
What about A?
Yeah, inclusive of A through D. Yeah, the long one.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mr. Summerall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one comment, which is we've got some different supplementals in there, and want to thank Mr. Phelps, our athletic director, board member Summerall, and others that were involved. We've made in the last several months, some awesome hires in the world of athletics, and super excited and very appreciative of that work. We've got some top-notch folks from golf, to basketball to football. We've always had awesome athletics, but I think it's going to take it to a next level. So very appreciative of those folks' work.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. And just to underscore that one other point, we welcomed last Thursday evening our new basketball coach, Mr. Ricardo Hill, who joined us, and we're very excited to have Coach Hill here, and he's already begun morning practices.
And as a bonus, he's a wizard at teaching computers.
There you go.
And computer technology. Who knew?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Konecki. Mr. Davis, the Treasurer's Report, please.
Under my report this evening, I have to approve the minutes of the April 12th, 2022 regular meeting and the April 21st, 2022 special meeting, to approve the financial reports for the month ending April 30th, 2022, to approve the following contracts for the 23 school year. Item 1 is comprehensive concepts in speech and hearing psychology services. This is on behalf of All Saints School. This money is state money that comes to the various various private schools within our school district boundaries, and we are obligated to manage those funds on behalf of those districts. Under the addendum, it should read item C. Actually, it should read item C, number 2. I apologize. Sometimes the formatting on the addendum gets out of whack. That item is a Warren County ESC. It's for nursing services and a master service agreement. The cost is $243,648. This is for, again, as we talked about earlier in my forecast, for services for students that must be provided by law that the district cannot provide using our own staff. Back to the agenda, we look at item D as a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission. If you remember this process, we started it back in January where we approved the tax budget that went to the county auditor. The county auditor reviews that, sends this back to us to approve, so we are approving the rates as sent out by the county auditor on our property taxes. Item E is the approval of the May 2022 five-year forecast as presented earlier. Item F is the approval to participate in special programs for the 23 school year. These 6 items are those federal funds we discussed earlier. Item G is to approve the establishment of 2 clubs, finance accounts, IH Computer Club and the Smile Club. And then finally, the final item is to accept donations. The 2 on the agenda are the Indian Hill PTO for ice space at the elementary school, $3,165. The Indian Hill Boosters provided a bus for the Latin Club at $800. And then on the addendum, the Indian Hill PTO provided $10,995 for the high school prom after prom. As always, we like to thank our partners for those donations. Without the partners, we cannot provide the privileges that we do here. And I believe Mr. Konecki has something to say.
Yes, thank you. Just as to add to the PTO donation, we want to thank the PTO. For those of you who are not familiar with iSpace, it's a STEM immersion facility where our students go to do immersive field trip experiences at different grade levels. It is an amazing facility in Hamilton County, unlike any other, and our students and our staff have a great partnership with iSpace, and we'll continue to expand and work with them on all things STEM moving forward, and hopefully all of our students get to experience the new iSpace Lab soon. It's a phenomenal facility that our partners have built.
I would say I have knowledge that after prom was super fun. And it was fun last year, but it was even more enjoyable this year. So thank you to our awesome team that put that together. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the treasurer's item 9A through H, inclusive of the addendum of what should be B2 and H3.
So move.
Mr. Mark?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Procedurally, moving on to the other board, you would propose
A and B would be your business.
I'm sorry?
Items A and B would be your business.
So we have on items 10 here, the approval of the amended superintendent contract and the approval of the amended treasurer contract.
Make a motion to approve item 10A, approval of amended superintendent contract. And then we'll move on to B if there's a motion. What's that? We can do them together or individually, it doesn't matter.
Those are separate items.
Usually do it separate.
Yeah, under other board business, we do them as separate items. Yep.
Let me re-clarify. I make a motion to move to approve item 10A, the approved amended superintendent contract.
So move. Second.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve item 10B, the approval of the amended treasurer's contract.
Second.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mrs. Eichholz?
Aye.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes. And if I could, just thank the Personnel Committee. The team spent a lot of effort coming up with all the work that you see here reflected on this. A lot of data was analyzed, a lot of study was done, and these decisions weren't reached lightly, and I know how much work it was, so thank you to the Personnel Committee. With that, we'll move on to our esteemed guest tonight. Presentation by the construction partners. Who's going to lead us off? Chris?
We have our partners from MCS and Skanska and MSA here tonight, and I think Chris Paytek from MSA is going to lead us off.
I think we need to move that podium forward a little bit.
All right. Thank you for having us again here this evening. We're back from last month with some additional updates on the projects. We're asked to kind of go back and revisit a few things last month, and so we had a chance to do that as a team between MSA, MCS, and Skanska. So again, we just want to share some updates tonight, answer any questions you might have relative to these projects. So as we talked about last month, one of the things we've been focused on lately is looking at some of the music spaces and the wellness spaces within the middle school and high school, and some potential for some additional spaces to be added into the project. So as you recall from last board meeting, we talked through what was currently in the master plan for these areas. Area A, we've been talking about a potential for some additional music space to the south of the auditorium, and on the right-hand side, subsequently some wellness spaces that are currently in, and some music spaces and some potential modifications to those as well. What we looked at here initially in this particular scenario was to the area on the left. We've talked through is adding some additional band orchestra spaces, which are currently over in the high school. These would be shared spaces, as we mentioned, for both the middle school and the high school in the new building. And then on the right, some of the band and orchestra spaces that are there now, when they shift over to the new space, those would be utilized for wellness, fitness spaces. We'll show you here in a second. You can see on the bottom the breakdown, some of the expanded music spaces, what we looked at initially, and went back and kind of looked through those again, had a chance to meet with faculty and staff in the music department, and I think there was a lot of good feedback and discussion about what was being shown to support those programs both now and in the future. One of the things that was looked at was potential some additional enhancements we'll show you here in a minute to those spaces to, I think, allow those spaces to, again, continue to serve the district well moving into the future that want to be considered here this evening. In addition to that, the wellness spaces, which we'll show you here on the right, again, went back, revisited those as well with faculty and staff and internally, and came back with a couple other items that we just want to make sure the board has a chance to consider here as well as we go through these particular pieces. I'm going to turn around here so I can actually see what I'm looking at. On the slide you see in front of you, again, this is an update to the slide we showed last month. This is showing the addition of some of these music spaces that we showed to the south of the auditorium. Really the main modification that was made from last month, and talking with, again, the faculty and staff and music department, looking at the possibility of some minor enhancements to this space to allow for some additional area that could be used as a secondary performance space. We're calling a black box. This area would also be used for choral, for middle school choral, as well as could be used by middle school and high school faculty and students for other purposes as a performance space and as a space with some of those additional enhancements. And we'll show you some detail here in a minute. In doing so, it has required some additional, like I say, modifications to this particular wing, which we'll show you, but it shows on, you see on the bottom, on the right-hand side is what we're kind of calling the base, which is, most days it would be a choral space and a secondary rehearsal drama performance space, and then it also has the ability to be converted, that same space, into a larger performance space, black box space, that could be used as a secondary performance environment to help supplement the theater that's there now. It gets a lot of use, and so that music department was looking at, could we, within the footprint we've been talking about, with some additional enhancements, allow that space to be used for multiple purposes. In order to do that, like I say, there are some additional items that needed to be included in this particular portion of the project. And we highlighted here on this particular slide. It shows some of the cost breakdown, 3 primary elements. In order to get that space to work, we're working with our theater consultant, who's been working with us all the way through on the projects from day one, and looking at different configurations of that kind of multi-purpose black box choral space that we did need to add a little bit of additional square footage to make that work. We ended up stacking some of these rooms on top of each other. Like I say, still maintain the overall footprint, but the upper level would get slightly larger to accommodate that. There's also some infrastructure needs for that black box theater to allow it to function that way. And we'll show you that here in a second. You can see in green. And then the other part was some additional storage, instrument storage, and high density storage that we wanted to make sure was also included in this piece as part of this wing moving forward that we broke out as well. The black box specifically, just to kind of provide some highlights to that. Again, we looked at a couple different configurations. The size and scale actually works out really well for that type of space. As you can see, as we mentioned on the previous slide, the ability to be able to potentially separate this space into 2 spaces at certain times, and then open it and have 1 large space for performances. You can see some pictures there on the upper right of what that kind of environment would be. And again, when it's used as black box. The breakdown you can see from infrastructure and equipment. So again, the big items that would need to be added into a space like that from an equipment standpoint, there's grids and lighting and curtains and all those kind of things that make it function as an actual performance space. That equate to about $1 million or so of that particular piece. The other part of that is more infrastructure based. There's some things with the flooring that would need to be done, structure, some of the acoustical materials and things that we would want to do no matter what. So whether that gets done all together at the same time or gets kind of piecemealed, the portion that's infrastructure, would have to be done as part of the build no matter what. The infrastructure piece is what really makes it, like I say, work as a black box. Those are kind of additive items that we've included in there to make sure we have all those pieces broken out.
Chris, can I ask you a quick question
Yep.
here before we move forward? So where is this 3,000 square foot additional space that you're talking about? Is it at the beginning, or is it in the middle, or at the end of this whole wing, new wing that we are talking about?
Was that, I'm sorry, Nikki, the square footage you said?
Yes, so where are we planning on putting, like on the picture, it seems like it's at the end of the wing.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm following you.
So if you see that picture,
Yep.
it seems like that number 2, the black box, is going to be at the end of that wing, right?
No, I think it's in the front. We're just pushing the whole thing back.
Yeah, I think, are you asking, is it getting wider?
If it's
or
at
is it
the end
getting
of the wing.
So it's at the, so the part that is growing slightly, if that's kind of the question, where that additional square footage.
Where are we adding that square footage? At
Right,
the
so
beginning of
the square footage itself is, the addition is pushing further away from, I guess, to the, in this case, plan north, in order to get the proper size for the black box and allow for some of those practice rooms to occur. The actual black box space, which would also be, like, say, double as a coral, is closer to the connector. So it can be kind of accessed directly off the connector.
Can you go back
from
to
public use.
the next slide and maybe explain also what you had to do just with the square footage? Forward it again, please, Chris. There on number 1, what you had to do with some of the
Sure.
ensemble.
So the blue space you see highlighted, those are practice kind of seminar, sectional type spaces that are small spaces. So we basically push those out over top of the band portion of the addition, which also have practice rooms. So we essentially are stacking spaces on top of each other just to make it more efficient, which allowed us to gain more square footage inside the upper level of that addition, if that makes sense. So the square footage is technically being added, like, to your point, Nikki, toward the end, but it allows for that green, which becomes that block box space, to be sized properly to make that happen. So the point being that, like you say, from a footprint standpoint, we didn't have to grow the size of the footprint. We just had to make that upper level grow in order to make that work, if that makes sense.
Okay, so one more question is that supposingly we decide that, okay, we are going to make this black box maybe later in the time, right? Can that be possible, or when we are constructing this performing art building, it has to be done at the same time?
Yeah, in order for the size that we need it to be to function as the black box space and a performance space, and its location in conjunction with, like I say, the entry lobby and bathrooms and flow, that it would need to be constructed, the actual square footage itself, as part of that overall addition. Like I say, there's some components within that space, or maybe something that could be added over time, some of the equipment components that we mentioned, but the actual square footage itself would need to be
Has to be done at the time of construction. Okay,
Yes.
so you're saying that the construction has to be done at the same time, but not necessarily that we have to do the whole thing at the same time. Meaning, like, creating the black box, like we can have the room, but we can, maybe in 6 months or we can create the black box later too. Or is there a...
Yeah, so what this slide was trying to show is, I think, maybe getting to a part of your point, Nikki, is that there's a portion, the infrastructure portion is the part that we're saying, that's going to need to be done as part of the initial build. It's stuff that's integral to the building itself. And then the equipment piece are the pieces that are kind of loose that you could push off, defer, right, do at a later time. Those will be needed for it to actually function as a performance space, but wouldn't have to be installed, purchased. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let's talk about the price point. Go back a little bit. Yeah, this one. No, where you have the next one, maybe? Yeah. So here, the additional space, you are saying that the additional space that we create, that would be 1.250, right?
Correct.
So we can do that, but so you think we can wait on the black box, that another 1,400,000, we can wait on that?
400,000 of that, Nikki, would have. If you click to the next slide, up in that top right, I think, Chris, if I'm understanding you correctly, the specialty equipment, which is the $1 million, right? Part of that's the grid and the lighting, right?
That's correct.
And is the infrastructure part would need to be part of the package.
The 400 would need to be part
of the package. Of the specialty equipment, is the grid can be totally post?
The milling could be pulled aside and be done. That full piece of equipment is something that if you wanted to consider doing that down the road, but you would need the 400,000 you would need to do as part of the build, if you decide to move forward with this black box function. Right, so the 1.4 could be 400,000. You could wait on the million, if that makes sense. So yeah, Holly's talking to me over here. So it could be $1 million. You could take $1 million, take that down to 2.1. Does that make sense? And again, we can flip back to these. Again, these are some of the same imagery we had shown previously as well, just to give people an idea of what these spaces would look like. These are some of the band and orchestra spaces you can see in the middle and on the right.
Chris, is it fair to say again with these artistic and 3D renderings we're looking at, these are not final. These are to give us an idea for anybody paying attention in the public. This is an ongoing design process.
That's correct. Yeah, these are concept designs, or exactly to kind of show intent of what these would eventually look like. Why not jump to this and we can come back with questions? Are you okay? So the other part we talked about, again, this was brought up as well, is the space where the current band and orchestra music spaces live on the north side of the auditorium. These spaces would be proposed to be converted into wellness and fitness spaces to again provide additional needs for the school district. So the space you can see on the top, again, we think you saw some of these layouts last month, would be where the band room is now, would become some additional strength and conditioning and weight kind of spaces. You can see there's also cardio type spaces, storage, new trainer spaces. Some of these areas were shown in the previous slides. Wrestling is there now, so that would continue to exist. Trainer spaces were, some of these areas, as you saw on that one slide, were already going to be renovated. So some of this would be done no matter what, but there's some additional work that we'd shown as part of that cost increase previously to do a full build and make it the wellness. Again, we had a chance to circle back with faculty and staff and talk through these spaces again. We were working with some vendors on some of the equipment just to kind of make sure it could actually lay out and work. Again, I think everyone's been really happy with the possibility here and what this would again provide for the school, the district, for all the student athletes as well as community members. There's some entrance enhancements and some other spaces, locker room, bathroom kind of spaces that would allow for community members to use these as well. We did take a look at some of the parking needs in the back and overall flow. And again, in general, felt like these spaces were, in fact, meeting the needs and doing what they needed to do long term. So not a lot of modifications here. The one thing that we did is we were able to get some more accurate pricing on the equipment. There is equipment that exists in the high school now, but it's a much smaller space. There's going to be some additional equipment needed ultimately. Again, that's something else that could be reconsidered as far as funding and financing for that. But we at least wanted to provide a cost in here that we didn't show last month for that equipment. And the other part was, it was something that was shown on some of the early master planning as a potential, is to add some synthetic turf on the back side of the high school. For people that might not know, there used to be another gym back there back in the day before they built the high school. It was tore down. It's currently grass. And so we were able to provide, again, a cost that if we wanted to add some additional turf, again, provide some additional space for student athletes, for training, but also during the day. Was talked about early on, could provide some space for students for outdoor back in that area. If you've been back there, there's not a whole lot there now. So again, just something we wanted to at least provide a price tag. Could be done at any point in time. There's nothing driving that per se, that you'd have to do it, but we wanted to make sure we at least include that in there because it was something, like I said, I think it was on some previous drawings.
Can I ask you one more question? Sorry. So, in this wellness space, is this design final or it has a little wiggle room? I'm not asking to add any more square footage, but the meeting room and I see there are 2 meeting rooms. Can they be reintegrated? Can we use some of the square footage to do something different, or this is what we go with?
Again, I think like Kirk mentioned with the music spaces, this is again was a more of a conceptual layout to show how some of these spaces and programs might work based on our conversations with athletics and some other staff. So I think, yeah, Nikki, I think that's, it's still, I think we can develop some programming. I think the cost was more or less developed around taking this existing space and turning it into something like this. And there's some things with flooring and materials. So depending on the program that you might be thinking of, there's certainly ways to.
No, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about is, I see there is a meeting room.
Mm-hmm.
See, in a high school, because this place is somewhere near it is in the high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see there are 2 meeting rooms, but in a district, we don't have something where, where the counselors can meet these students for, like, there are so many ways that these rooms can be used, but right now I see there are 2 small rooms. Can they be something refigured so that maybe we can have these rooms closer to the counseling department, where, because we had been talking about renovating the counseling department, but that's a separate project, I understand that. But in the meantime, can we have a space that is kind of connected with them? Can we connect this to the counseling department so that they have access to this too, or will this only be for the wellness?
I think, the spaces themselves, obviously, the location of it is where it is, and the counseling is kind of upstairs, but certainly any of these, particularly I think when we look at meeting spaces, multi-purpose spaces, if it's a fairly, simple room with furniture, I think the sizes of those could be modified. They certainly could be shared uses by other faculty staff.
So is this whole square footage on the lower level?
That's correct. Yeah, so this is actually, if you went to the left of this image, you would go onto the stage of the theater. So it's on it's on the lower level, almost the gym. It's just similar to the gym level, right? And the counselors are up above. There's ways to get there. I get your initial point about, could they be used for other purposes besides just fitness and athletics? Absolutely. I think there's some of that is already done, like in the locker room spaces that were redone a number of years ago, right? There's some spaces in there that are shared uses. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for those to be configured in a way that could be accessed by various folks.
So we can refigure it
Well,
a little bit. I'm not saying the whole thing.
The size of it is what we're looking at overall. Is like programmatically, that is a decision for the district. So how you program that space, I was like, we can put different meeting spaces in a flexible space for you, so you can use it for different opportunities throughout the day.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
I'm just going to figure through. So then this is, again, some additional imagery of these wellness spaces. Again, these are conceptual. I'm working with some equipment vendors as well, just to give folks an idea of what these spaces could look like and their overall use and function within the wellness space. We then, too, and again, we can circle back with a couple of these images. This is just a summary of some of the base costs. So the bold items were some of the things that we had shared previously, and then the lighter weight numbers are some additional costs that we've come back with, additional scope, just to make sure you're able to see all those items. As was mentioned, the 3.1, we kind of broke that down as we showed earlier. It could be broken down further, but you could see all in with all the items, what that number looks like, and then the individual items. Do you want to add anything else? So, open up for
Questions from board members about this slide or any other design questions?
Yeah, no questions, but just thank you, Chris, to you and your team. I know we kind of gave you a charge last work session to come up with more detail on this plan, and I know how hard you guys worked the last 2-3 weeks to get this together, so thank you for that effort, and thank you, most importantly, for meeting with the music staff and the athletic staff to get a sense of what works best from an academic programming perspective. So thank you for that effort. Questions from the team?
I was just going to add that this gives us more clarity. So to echo Bear's comments, this definitely helps, gives us more vision and gives us some information we need. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nikki, Nolan?
I don't have any questions.
I guess, Chris, I'm sorry, just to go back, I know we talked about this a little bit on the timeline. obviously we're asking you to do a lot more work, so we're not going to stick you to the fall of 23 or the beginning of the school year 23. I guess if you could give us a little bit of a sense of the time saving of doing this now as opposed to 5 years down the road. And then I know the last meeting we talked about the cost savings, so I think we're covered there, but what do you guys envision from a timing perspective, adding the scope?
Well, ask the expert. Pete from Skanska is going to.
I was hoping you would answer that for Pete, you know?
I mean, when we talked last month, we said that, getting all the work done around on the back side, our goal would be is to overlap it with the middle school work, and it would take it out to the end of the year of 23. I would vision, now we're still programming, we're still trying to figure out stuff, but I would envision by the, obviously we don't want to plant grass in winter and do final touches, but we'll be developing into that following spring. But I would think we can have it up and running by early 2024.
And did we add on this plan, Chris, is there any improvements to the parking lot back there where the current construction or the 7th grade classrooms are? I know that parking back there is fairly tight.
Yeah, at this point, again, based on this particular plan layout, again, talking with the folks there, we've, at this point, left the amount of pavement. We're adding the drive around the back of the campus as part of this overall project. What's that? So, yeah, right now there's not any plan. They were looking at kind of the parking layout and configuration within the current paved area, but it was decided at this point just that it was meeting the need that it needed to, and that no further modifications were being made.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, I assume, Pete, adding parking down the road wouldn't be that big of a deal from a timing perspective, cost perspective.
No.
Okay.
So do we have what we need to have in terms of timelines to make sure that we're not holding you up? We've got the appropriate deadlines that we need to make sure we know when we're acting upon?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you guys speak.
I'll say,
sorry.
Based on the kind of information we shared last board meeting, I think we looked at May here of getting, if we can get decisions on the pieces we've been talking about. Like Pete mentioned, they'd maybe be able to overlap some of that timeline so that we can continue on and keep these projects going with the rest of the work. I think if we start pushing past May, it's going to become more
right. So you would like a decision by the end of the month. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Okay.
But realistically, it's tonight because we don't have another meeting scheduled.
Got it.
Didn't think about that.
And we'll give Pete a heart attack.
Yeah, that's correct. So,
go ahead. Any questions? No, I was going to say move on to discussion, but otherwise.
Can I just say for anybody watching publicly, I mean, I think we've all been through a lot of these presentations, but the project team, I know, is trying to also keep it light for us as we go later into the evening here, but the timeline isn't right. We were all kind of giggling there for a minute because we talked a lot about this, but the idea is that the culminating decisions that we're seeing tonight on the performing arts wing and the expanded scope, we need a decision on in order to continue the design process and to make sure your timeline for the 23-24 school year to complete the facility project would happen within the timeline we've discussed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion that if it's seconded, then we can move into discussion, right? Around, that's what I'd like to do.
Do we need to discuss first, Mick, or what's the procedure on that?
Generally a motion, a second, and then discussion, correct? And then a vote.
I think the board could proceed either way, that we don't have anything that we traditionally do.
Let's just have a discussion first.
Okay, sure.
Does anybody want to jump in and share their thoughts? I've got a few thoughts I'm trying to get organized in my head.
I'll share because I was ready to make a motion, which is I think that we've been talking about what we're going to do on the athletic side and on the performing arts side for a substantial amount of time. I think when we go back historically, there's been conversations going back for over a decade around how do we balance the achievement in all areas for our school and for our students. I think we collectively have had an opportunity to look at this and say, hey, do we want to create a world-class opportunity for our kids? And I think the arts impacts a tremendous amount of kids, whether they're going on in a post-secondary education or not, in some type of artistic endeavor. And so my thought process is that we approve the ability for our architects to move forward in the design and the scope, but limit that to, a roughly $12 million expansion of the scope, giving us the opportunity to move forward. I think that, quite frankly, our kids deserve it, and I've spent hours upon hours upon hours looking at the 5-year forecast. I think between a combination of some debt service and our cash balance, that we're in a position to have great financial stewardship and still make this happen for the district. And I think it's the right thing to do for the kids, and I think it's still a fiscally responsible thing to do.
Thanks. And I'll I guess, share where I am. Originally, when we looked at this, the expanded scope, again, not knowing, basically going from what the original performing arts wing was to adding the additional performance space and then some of the additions to the wellness center, I didn't really anticipate it would be an extra $3 to $4 million. I just don't have experience in pricing that out. And my initial reaction was, man, that's awfully expensive. It sure looks great. It would be phenomenal for our kids. But my initial gut reaction was, I don't know that we have the capability to do that. And so I spent over the weekend, and since we've had this information, a ton of time really diving through our budget, diving through the resources we have, looking at our cash balance, looking at our 5-year forecast, comparing the 5-year forecast to how other districts handle their money, and looking at the challenges of our revenue remaining flat, and making sure we can do this in a manner that doesn't cut people and doesn't cut programs down the road or put an unnecessary strain on our budget. So I went through this, talked to Mick a lot about it, talked to Kirk a lot about it, and what I've come to the conclusion is we can't afford to do this. There's no question this is a significant expense. It's unprecedented for this district to go out and look at using its cash for this type of project and some debt service potential opportunities. But as I look at our 5-year forecast and our cash balance, I think it's responsible of us to invest the money the taxpayers give us into the school district. And this, to me, is a sound investment, unlike any we've made before, perhaps with the exception of the construction of the initial auditorium, which was, back in the 70s or 80s? This, to me, is that next transformative project to really show to the community that we pride ourselves on our artistic and performing arts and endeavors. And when I go back and I look at the numbers of, we've talked about how much do we borrow versus how much cash do we spend, you can play with those scenarios all day long, and I've done that. And every time I do it, I get to the scenario that if you look at our 5-year forecast and where we think revenues will stay, we can make this happen. Now is the time to do it. If we're ever going to do it, now is the time. We have the construction crews on site. We're disrupting the building. It will be so much more expensive to do this down the road. And my concern is if we don't do it now, we don't do it. And looking back at the history of this district, I feel like when we've done projects in the past, we've always left something there that maybe we should have looked at doing. When the elementary school was built, we left the sawtooth. When the high school was built, we left the old band rooms. And there's little sections of our school that don't meet the standard of what the new middle school is going to look like and what the balance of our schools look like. And I think there's no question it's a risk. There's no question it's expensive, but I think it's the right investment to make. We have amazing teachers in this area who are going to continue to do amazing things with our theater program and our performing arts programs. And I'm really excited for this. I think this takes us to a truly world-class level in that area.
So I'll share a few thoughts. I wrote down a few things because we all had been discussing about it. And there were so many numbers that we all have gone through. So I just wrote a few notes. So we are spending about $77 million for a new middle school building. We don't know how much more it is going to go up because of the inflation and, the economy that we are in. So my worry and my concern is that we may put a lot of pressure on our savings if we take this huge amount out of our 15 million cash balance, which I think, because at this point we don't know how much more we have to contribute towards that for our middle school project, which is not yet finished. It is at the beginning, so we don't know what more is coming our way. And so I feel that taking this big amount is a little concerning for me. Currently, it may look that we have 15 million cash balance by our current projections, but this may soon decrease by several millions if the cost of that construction middle school goes significantly higher, as I said. And we don't know what number we are going to finish when we finish this building. I am of the view that we need to have the performance art building for sure. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that. As we have seen more students enrolling into the performing art department from the previous year. So I do see the need of a bigger classroom, practice room, and the storage room that they're projecting, that they are suggesting. I'm not opposing that. The question is, can we take 12 million from a saving without knowing how much more we may have to spend on middle school? Maybe we can just wait 6 months. I don't know, waiting 6 months versus 5 years, how much does the price go up from 12 million? Maybe a little, but at least in 6 months we'll have a better understanding of what's coming our way, is how I'm thinking. So, performing art, yes, we need that.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
you're talking about the inflationary pressure or the cost overruns on the 77 million? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that, we don't know. Like maybe in 6 months, we'll have a better understanding of where that number is going. I think we are already a little over from 77, and we have just started the construction. So, I just want to be a little bit more careful. If 6 months is not going to make a huge difference, then I would suggest that we wait a little bit just to have a better understanding of our finances.
Nick, you had that exact same thought, and I guess I have a question and then a comment on that. The question might be more for Pete, is what's left of the middle school spend, which is our most significant spend? I assume we've purchased the steel at this point and all the big ticket items. How much of the middle school building itself is left to bid out? And how much risk is there of our estimates today changing?
I was going through a bunch of numbers earlier.
Pete, could you step up to the microphone, please, so we can get you, everybody can hear you? Thank you.
I was going through a bunch of numbers and comparing those over the last week, knowing that this is a decision. The market is very volatile right now. We have about, I would say, more than close to 50% of the building, the project, all the work left to probably GMP out. We're just now starting to get, a couple more phases of that in. I think we are taking most of our numbers by the end of May that we got to vet out. We were looking at overcoming the site overages we had, with the detention. I think that was a pretty significant number. Steel and stuff was a little bit over, about 250 or something. But we're in the process of vetting out a lot of stuff, and actually we're having some more meetings this week and figuring out, are we conservatively predicting a certain percentage of overrun? It's not a bad discussion point. There's risk in the market. There's also risk for waiting and then cost of general conditions and stuff like that. In my mind, if we would buy that work, would we buy it right now? It's going to be, we could always price it, design it, price it, get it all vetted out, and help finalize the risk for the whole project,
Yeah, I guess
or go forward.
That was going to be my comment is, if we approve that we want to do this tonight, we're not writing the check tonight. And ultimately, we could invest in the time and the resources to prepare the drawings, to do the work to bid this thing out. And if by the time it comes to bid out this scope of the project, the rest of the project has gone to hell, or this is way over, we can pull back. We would obviously have our investment in the cost to prepare the drawings, but because Nikki, I share your concern. Who knows what will happen, and like everything in life, these are our best educated estimates as to the price, and that's something to me that gives me comfort in that we can approve this, keep everybody online tonight, knowing that if it comes, at least in my mind, if this comes in at this number, if the rest of the project doesn't escalate significantly, and I think if we're halfway through under the GMPs where we've mitigated that risk to some degree, that's who knows what tomorrow holds. That helps me get comfortable of approving this tonight, and we have a fail stop if something crazy happens in the next 6 months. Because the reality is this probably won't be bid out for another 6 to 9 months, I would guess.
Would say design 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
That might be hitting the market.
Yeah, I mean, so we have some, if need be, we've got that, ability to have that protection. I don't think we'll be there. I don't want to do that. But it's protection if we need it.
So, but did we not at the last meeting approve that they can go ahead and design it and then bring us some?
I think we just approved the high-level conceptual. The next step would be truly engineered drawings with the architects and understanding, how much steel is in the building and all of those types of things that go into that.
What we have approved, if I understand correctly, right, is we approved we knew there was going to be some overruns, right? And those overruns and some of the bid packages have come back, and we've already approved those additional overruns that were already kind of budgeted in. So we're through those pieces we've already voted through.
The project team also did share with us, and it's on a different slide deck, what the creep and inflationary costs could be last month if we waited different periods of time and we pushed the project out. So we could review that outside of this meeting, but we have those numbers too that they shared last month.
For this scope of the services.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying that it's not the $12 million, we can wait and, let me say it again. So you're saying that we don't need, I understand we're not writing the check, but we are approving this project, and once we approve it, because middle school, you have already started putting the foundation in, and you will need to put this foundation, right?
This is being bought separately from the middle school project.
There will be a separate construction contract we enter into.
Totally separate, phased, scheduled, but the goal would be can we overlap 3 months with the middle school and save? I apologize, I don't have the cost. I did the cost delta for showing that overlap, and I can provide that back to Mick and Kirk tomorrow.
And to meet the timeline of finishing the project the way we want.
Right, I mean, it's 2 different construction packages, so it's 2 different bids that we would send out. So it's Project A, Project B. The idea is that we're going to have people here doing work. We're going to have guys and gals here doing all the work. If the project's going to overlap, we can save a substantial amount of money because the workers are already here. So they're here doing, interior finish work. They're putting roofs on. There's an overlap there. But I think the motion that I would at some point obviously want, Nancy and Craig to weigh in. But what we're approving is the scope. We're approving the ability to expand the drawings, to do all the prep work and package work. And then to that point, I think to Bear's point, if all of a sudden we're some astronomical number over on the middle school project, we can then revisit, okay, we've invested a substantial amount of money in the architectural construction plans and yada, 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 but we are where we are.
And we're still going to have to, this board will still have to ultimately approve the construction contract for the expanded scope at a future board meeting.
Correct.
But if we don't get the team
contract.
moving tonight on the drawings, we're going to miss the opportunity to realize all the savings we've discussed.
So each 3 months, we're looking at about 6% inflationary increase right now within the industry, and I don't know when that's going to stop at this point.
And I don't think
when we
anybody
talk
does,
about
so.
overlap, we talk about this team as well. You've got oversight on your site construction, and you're looking just for a project team for $60,000 a month at a time, and then plus, if you had to bring a contractor back on, there's mobilization and demobilization that causes that. If we already have teams mobilized out here, that's a different discussion.
I mean, I think the delta, right, between the inflation, the mobilization, the management team, this project usually creeps from, my guess, not being a construction, engineering, architect professionals, this thing could creep from 12 to 14 to 15 million, depending on if we wait a year,
Like I said, last month, we put or maybe that was 2 months ago, we put the dollars on that creep out.
Big numbers.
So I just need to go back and give that back to Kirk and Mick tomorrow.
That's in the work session minutes.
Yeah.
We haven't.
Yeah, if you can see those.
I just don't have it on top of my head, sorry.
No, that's fine. If we can see those numbers, that will, I think, probably help us a little bit more.
But a 4-month period of non-overlap was about $800,000. It was probably $767 or something like that, but $800,000 overall. So, because we were looking at an 8-month time span of this extending. 4 of that would be overlap, 4 of that would go on to probably spring of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it here. The total estimated savings, this was from the work session last month, all in was about $770,000.
Yep, that rings a bell.
767,390 to be exact. I mean, in my mind, look, there's no doubt doing it now. If you're going to do it, we need to do it now.
Well, I have a kind of totally different perspective than anybody up here, I think. I mean, I love the idea of the music space. I love the idea of the expanded athletics. I wish we could have a big innovation center. It's my dream. But the reality is, last year in May, we went to the public for 2 votes. We asked for an operating levy, which we hadn't asked for in, I think, 27 years. And the community graciously passed that for us so that we can have the best academics and pay our teachers and pay our administrators and have small class sizes and everything else that we do so well. And they very graciously voted to pass a significant bond levy of $77 million. We know just because of the state of the union with inflation, supply chain, everything else, that we're hard-pressed to keep it at 77, even with the scope that we presented. So as a steward of the taxpayers' dollars, I'm just really uncomfortable basically taking out another bond debt and spending more on scope without the community voting on it. And so regardless of how wonderful I think this all is, I'm just not in a position right now to support this. We had great success with Home of the Braves and private funding. I would feel much more comfortable if we were seeing some of that already for this, but we haven't really had time to do that. We have a very generous community, so maybe, who knows, somebody will step up and help us out. But right now that's not happening, so as a steward of the taxpayers' dollars, as much as I would love to do this, I'm more concerned about our operating and not taking funds from our operating budget, even though I know on paper it all looks like it works out. In 4 years, we have to renew that levy, most likely, and we need the confidence of our taxpayers and our citizens at that point. So that's where I fall down on this.
Yeah, a couple things. I agree with Nancy that we need to make sure that we're being financially sound and stewards of the community. But I'll caveat that with, we've had unprecedented inflation in the past 6 months, 9 months that we haven't had in 25 years. Because of that, we're having our dollars not go as far. I would love to do more than this, but we have to draw the line somewhere. I'd love to do another field house. There's other things, the innovation center that was talked about, and those things, we just got to draw the line somewhere. But I think that if we don't do this project, we're never going to do it. And I wanted to be on this board to make it academically, athletically, and arts the best of the best. And I think this gets us there. And I want to be prudent with our money. And I'm not trying to swing for the fences, but personally, I want to make sure we find that line and where that median is. So if we do this now and commit to it, and then things get out of hand, then I think we need to pull the plug. But we've got to walk this line, and it's a very, very narrow line to me. So I'm okay with it, but I think if we have this creep and we get some surprises, then we need to step back and look at this and be smart about it.
Yeah, and Nancy, I hear your point, and that's something I've thought a lot about as someone who kind of led the campaign on the levy and talked to a ton of voters about this. There's no question this is a big spend of taxpayer dollars. To be clear, we're not raising anybody's taxes. We're using the existing resources we have. And Mick mentioned it earlier in his 5-year, when he was talking about the 5-year forecast. I think it's important to ask, if we're sitting on excess cash that has been given to us by the taxpayers, I think their expectation is that it gets invested into the school. And I think that's the prudent thing to do with that dollar. So I'm not saying you take every last dollar you have. We certainly need to keep the rainy day fund and account for the unknown, because they will continue to exist and surprises always will come up. But every which way I've looked at this, and the various models I've run that Mick has looked at, we have those built-in safeguards even doing the project at this level. And with being restricted onto how we can invest our resources, we're not doing anybody any good sitting on taxpayers' dollars, not putting those dollars to work. And as a taxpayer, I want the school district to put those dollars to work. It is, to Craig's point, it's a fine line of what's too much. That's a really difficult question to answer. But as I've studied this, I've come to the conclusion that with the resources we have and with some ability to look at, creative financing on this, we have the ability to do this without jeopardizing our staff and without jeopardizing our programming. And I think it's the prudent investment to make.
And I'll just add that I do think we need to do some fundraising and attack that so we can mitigate this. So that is something that we should definitely be in front of. And there's been some side conversations. I think we need to have something more formalized on that front so that we can go down this path and raise $2 million, $4 million, whatever that is, to help do that. Because I do not want to be put into a corner and be in a problem as far as a financial standpoint. we're not going to get to that point.
I agree with that 100%.
So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something else, Nancy?
Yeah, just one more thing is, I agree that we have a good cash balance, and I agree that we shouldn't be sitting on it when we clearly have a need for it. But we shouldn't be putting too much of pressure on our cash balance that it just shrinks so much that it could, I understand that we can do fundraising and probably get some of this cost down. I have no doubt that a community would not come forward to help us with that. But right now, we cannot kind of assume that it will happen, right? So that's where I'm not very comfortable taking this big of a chunk out from our cash balance, from our savings. And
yeah, and just to be clear on that, I'm not proposing we take this all out of our savings and deplete the cash we have. I think there is a somewhere in the middle ground of contributing the cash we have and then going through the debt options, the bond offerings we talked about at the last board session. And when I ran through the models that we all had looked at, we can do this to the point where we were still in surplus spending in fiscal year 26, assuming all the projections hold. Mm-hmm. We're not in deficit spending. We will still have sufficient, somewhere in the $14 to $15 million of cash reserves at the end of that 5 years. Again, assuming normal projections, and that's without
Exactly.
seeking any, additional dollars, which I think we will. I think we'll be able to do that. So I just get back to it. Every way I've looked at this, and trust me, I tried to talk myself into thinking we couldn't do it because it is a very big spend, but I'm confident with our forecast that we can get there and not unnecessarily strain our operating budget.
So I'm going to make a motion that the board approves adding the expanded music spaces, rebuild wellness spaces into the project scope, and authorizes the project team to further develop the expanded music spaces, rebuild the wellness spaces in the construction document design phase, and that the budget of the added scope and planning will not exceed $12 million.
Second.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall? Mrs.
Yes.
Eichholz?
No.
Mrs. Singh?
I guess since everybody is willing to take that big risk, we'll go with it.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
So next steps, just for the public and everybody's review here, we will continue to work with the project team to move forward on design phase. We will convene committees next month prior to a board meeting and talk about next steps for the financing for that approval. And I think that's all that is left on the agenda.
That's all I got. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us until 9 o'clock. Maybe we can find some money for a new clock in the budget. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everybody. Thank you, project team members.